That's okay.
I guess they moved stuff to here.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I hope everyone had a great lunch. This is the afternoon session, session 2 of the general medical cannabis um, portion of this conference. I'm Josephine Canella Crail. I am currently physician and clinical community relations with the Flowery, who is one of Florida's medical cannabis dispensaries and growers. Our grow is out of Homestead, Florida, and I'm also the founder of a medical cannabis education company, which I founded back in 2018, MMJ Knowledge. I've been kicking around Florida cannabis since about 2011, 2012 in the legislative landscape. And now I'm on the other side dispensing medication and educating on clinical cannabis. So I'm glad that you guys could join us. Our first presenter is Michelle Wilson, and she's with the Medical Marijuana Education and Research Initiative with Florida A&M University out of Tallahassee, Florida. And Michelle's going to talk to us today about Medical Marijuana Education and Research Initiative, which is the MMERI, and everything what we need to know. So thanks, Michelle.
For those of you who are familiar with FAMU, you would know that that's our Rattler strike. So you can all do it. It's okay. You don't have to be a rattler. Well, yes, I am Michelle Wilson. I'm so happy to be here before you today. This is my first time attending the conference. I'm sure it won't be my last. And I have the distinct honor of having to speak to you after lunch. Lucky me. So I hope I don't bore you too much. I do have some information to share with you about FAMU's Medical Marijuana Education and Research Initiative, fondly known as Mary. No, not Mary Jane, just Mary. And we're going to go over some interesting information, talk to you about our education plan, what we're all about, and I will tell you in 3 words: education, education, education. And not advocacy. So we are very serious about our legislative mandate, what the state of Florida expects from us, and we go about every day making sure that we are making strides towards that end. So can we get started, or? Okay, I'm in control. All right, so again, here's what we're going to talk about in a brief period of time today. I think I have 20 minutes, so I am going to stay on time as we go through this information. You will see that Section 381.986 gives FAMU the authority and the space to provide education and also to educate Florida's minority and diverse populations about the use of medical marijuana, but also about the illegal use, the unlawful use of marijuana. As we all know, recreational marijuana is not legal in Florida, and there are consequences associated with possession of illegal marijuana. That's part of our mission, not only to talk about medical cannabis, but to also provide the balanced approach, the balanced information about what could happen to you if you decide and if you continue to use illicit marijuana. So the mandate. Why FAMU? What is FAMU doing in the medical marijuana business? Why? Does anybody have, I'm an interactive person, so does anyone have a clue? Don't cheat. Agriculture,
Reparations for an unjust law.
reparations, anybody else? What was that? Pharmacy, that's another one. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you. What was it? great lobbyist, and that she's won. Oh my gosh. We'll tell you the story later. I won't have time today, but thank you for sharing that. Well, the mandate has come from the Florida legislature is because Florida A&M University has been educating minority and diverse populations since 1887. So how suitable is that for FAMU now to educate minority and diverse populations about medical marijuana? Because we want to make sure everyone has this information. This is a new space, and we're learning things every day, but we don't want to leave anyone behind. And because we know that black and brown individuals are more likely to be arrested for possession of marijuana as other demographics, we want to make sure that they understand the consequences of illegal marijuana on our communities, but also know that there is an alternative. There is medical marijuana, and if you're self-treating one of those qualified conditions, look, here's a way to legally go about treating your condition. And now, we don't advocate when we're educating, but we do provide the information so that individuals can make an informed decision. We give you the information, then you decide. We all know that marijuana is not for everyone, and it may not be a solution for everyone, but that information is golden. So we want to make sure that we are actually providing sound, credible, and reliable information to all of the demographics in the state of Florida. And so here's the Florida map. But what we want to talk about in terms of this map and the spread and the demographics is are the three components of the MARY approach. That's education, communication, and community engagement. All three of those components work interchangeably. When we educate, we want to make sure people are actually learning something, that they're gaining something from the information that we share. And how do we do that? We use a lot of surveys because we want you to take a pretest, and we want to see what your knowledge is before we get started with our educational component. And then we want to evaluate what you've learned and what those gains are so that we could better use that information and that data to continuously improve on our approach, making sure that we keep in mind that people learn differently. Some can read and absorb information. Some people would like pictures. Some people would prefer a lecture. Some people would prefer video. So we collect all of that type of data as well as qualitative data. That community engagement portion, oh, it's so important. It's so important. I learned so much by just talking to people. I learned so much by just hearing the questions and then taking those questions back to my office and doing some research and trying to find the resources and getting back to people. Just at the last Family Cafe, I had so many parents come up to me and they wanted to know if I knew any pediatricians that could help them with their children. Their children were on the spectrum. Their children, she showed me bite marks and all kinds of things that were happening to the children, and they were having a hard time finding a pediatrician to sign off on the use of medical cannabis. And so several of them have my card, and I promised to get back in touch with them. And I've even spoken to a pediatrician's office here today. I don't know if you're in the room, maybe not, but so I've already made that connection. So this is one form of community engagement, attending functions like this with leaders as yourselves, industry leaders, medical doctors. This is all very important to MARY. And then we take that information and share it with our communities. Another way that we're engaged in the community are through community forums. We bring the experts to the table in a community where those individuals in that community can have a one-stop shop access to the medical marijuana doctor, the attorney, the pharmacist. We also have the religious leader from the community there because everybody wants to know, well, what does the pastor say about marijuana? And so we have that individual there because they are community leader. They're part of that leadership. And we have a host, We ask questions, and then we allow time for the audience to ask their questions while creating a safe environment for them to do so. Because a lot of us know when we hear the word marijuana, some of us tend to draw up because there's so much stigma attached to just that word alone. And so it's kind of hard to get people to warm up to the idea of having a conversation, even though they show up with a lot of questions. They're waiting for one person to ask that question. And usually when one person asks the question, others start joining in, and they're emboldened enough to go ahead and ask their questions. And the bottom line is they're going to get credible information. We're going to debunk the myths and replace those myths with facts. And they're going to take those facts back to their family members, back to their communities, and they're going to be able to provide knowledge that they've learned in that forum. And that's important because we have such a tall lift throughout the state of Florida. There are only 5 members of the team. So let me just jump back because I got ahead of myself, and I do want to recognize those 5 members because we are some of the most hardest working people in the state of Florida. And I do have my colleague here with me today, Ms. Krishan Jones, Marixia Krishan Jones in the back. You might have seen her at our booth. Yay. And then we have G.P. Mindy is our current interim executive director. We have Virginia King, who's back in the office, and she is our program administrator. And of course, you know who I am today. So with just 5 individuals, we must partner, and we must engage, and we must involve the community in terms of what we're trying to accomplish, because the legislature is holding us accountable in more ways than one. I don't have on a slide about the quarterly report that we have to submit to the governor, the Senate, and the House, and legislative members, and the president of the university every 90 days about how well we're doing in terms of reaching minority communities in Florida. So it's very serious business here. And then communications. How are we communicating this information? Again, different people learn in different ways. If you got people in rural areas of the state, they may or may not have a computer. They may or may not be associated with social media platforms. They don't care anything about it. So we send out postcards because people generally will go get their mail, and maybe there's a chance to read it, especially if it's talking about marijuana. That's one way that we educate a subpopulation in Florida. Another way is that we have all of our collateral in various languages, to include Mandarin, Spanish, English, what else, Marixia? There you go, French, Haitian, Creole, because again, our mandate is to educate all minority communities, as outlined in our census, throughout Florida, not just in Tallahassee, not just in Orlando, but across the entire state. All right, let's talk about that education. FAMU is very, very big on education. Why? It's an institution of higher learning. And so what we're doing is making it easy for people to go to that website, pick out modules of information that they're interested in. Click on that module. If you want to know about medical marijuana and the history, click on the module. If you want to know about medical marijuana, pediatrics, we're going to have a module for that. What about medical marijuana and drinking alcohol? We're going to have it because we want to make sure we're bringing relevant topics of the day to members of the community. And even though we're targeting minority communities, this information is available to anyone. It's on our website, our Facebook. Virtual forums are on our Facebook for everybody to see, but our legislative mandate is very clear, it's very narrow, and we want to make sure that we are successful in that regard. Community engagement. Again, we talked about speaking engagements and the outreach events. We did not talk about our conversations on cannabis. Our conversations on cannabis occur once a month. They are on Facebook Live on Thursdays at noon, as well as on YouTube. And we bring those relevant topics again to the community, allow them to type questions in the chat, and engage with the doctor or the expert of the day or the bail bondsman, because we did have a show with the bail bondsman. Remember, we talk about both sides of the equation. We are balanced. We talk about using medical cannabis, but we also talk about what happens if you get stopped, pulled over, and you have marijuana. Don't try to tell the cop that it's medical marijuana, see, I got my card, and you don't have your medicine in its original package. You're going to get in trouble. And so we want to make sure, that's just an example, that people understand that. We have a bail bondsman on one of our conversation on cannabis to talk about that. Real life experience. So that's very important, and that brings that credibility to the table and to the conversation. And then we have a Train the Trainer program. Of course, you know your communities. We tell people, you know your communities a whole lot better than Mary does sitting in Tallahassee. And so what we're trying to do is create ambassadors. We want to train you so that you can go back to the community, carry the Mary message, and train people in your communities. How great is that? And so by partnering with individuals, again, throughout Florida, and collaborating with individuals, we are going to be successful in getting into these communities. Because some of the communities, if they see me coming, they may very well not want to trust me or think that I'm credible. I don't speak the language. They don't know, they just don't know. But if I have someone from the Hispanic community going into another Hispanic community, perhaps there is some level of trust. And so we train individuals, and then we certify individuals. These ambassadors go out in their communities, and they carry on. They help us with this tall lift. Okay, these are just examples of our education campaigns on cannabis, conversations on cannabis. You can see some of our guests. I don't know if you all recognize actor Malik Yoba. He was on one of our shows, and he shared with us how he was taking gummies in the hospital. I mean, he had a lot of pain from quadruple bypass surgery. So he shared his story with members of the public, and we were able to engage, and we have a host, and she did a phenomenal job in terms of moderating the panel. And then again, our last one, most recent one, is about greening out using alcohol and cannabis. So we really try to make sure that the topics we bring to the public are very interesting and engaging, because we want them to learn, we want them to talk about it, and we want them to engage. Okay, you got it? I want to give you time to take your picture. Okay. Yes. Oh, yeah. You go ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it. I like audience participation. Well, thank you, sir, for participating and engaging. Right? I'm looking at my time here. So, Mary's communications, how do we communicate? Oh, in so many ways. And some of you I've already heard from. You told me that you heard a commercial about Mary, or you've seen Mary on TV, or you've heard Mary on the radio podcast. Those are all of the ways, some of the ways that we use to also communicate to communities throughout Florida, to include the print advertisements, newsletters, and most importantly, in some regards, social media, because we're able to get information out there really quick. So I don't know if any of you have actually heard any of our information? If you have, can you raise your hand? I'm always interested. Yeah, see, you're in here. Yeah, we're reaching thousands and thousands and millions of people throughout Florida, not necessarily having to be there in front of them, but just making sure the message gets out, making sure they know where to go, making sure they have access to our website, which has a host of information, really good information. One of the things that I've learned is that people don't necessarily know who is a resource, where are the resources, where do they go? This is a new space. And so what we're trying to do is say, hey, we're a resource. We're going to provide you credible information. And then you take that information when we tell you how to go about getting a medical marijuana card, when we talk to you about qualifying conditions and who's your doctor, because those are just terms that go right over people's heads. They have no idea what a qualified physician is. They think it's perhaps their family care doctor. Why can't I go to my family care doctor to get my recommendation? So that's an opportunity to explain and to talk to people so that they can learn, and then they can share that with, again, their family members, their friends, about how this process works. And we work very closely with the Department of Health, the Office of Medical Marijuana Use. We actually have some of their information at our booth. They have a form that outlines how this works. What are the steps? What do you have to do? What are some of those qualifying conditions? And they list some of them out. So information that's easily obtainable, that's broken down in plain language, as I like to say, is very helpful as people try to navigate in this space. So what are those demographics that I keep talking about in terms of targeting minority communities? And there they are. And we get those demographics based on the United States Census report as they identify minority groups. This is some of the information, again, that we share. You can see it's balanced. We talk about medical marijuana, the legal part, and then we also talk about how recreational marijuana is illegal. We try to provide information about, for example, can you smoke marijuana in your car? What happens if you smoke marijuana in your car? Even if you had a medical marijuana card, first, you can't do that. But second, you're going to give a police officer probable cause if you get pulled over, and then you're going to be in some serious trouble. You would be surprised to know that people don't know that. They think if they have a medical marijuana card, first of all, they don't necessarily have to go to the dispensary to purchase it because they already know the guy down the street. I got my card, what else do you want me to do? So I'm going down the street, I'm going to pay $10, $5, and then I'm going back home. Guess what? It's my medical marijuana. I got my medicine, and here's my card. No, it doesn't work like that. And you have to explain that to people. And sometimes you don't get that opportunity to explain that to people unless you're in a forum face-to-face and you've created that safe space for people to be comfortable and talk about that stuff. For them to tell us that, you know what, I don't want to buy it out of the dispensary. I'm growing it in my house already, and when I get ready to use it, I just go pluck whatever off, and I'm good to go. I'm not going to a dispensary. Well, you know, that's my opportunity. That's my opportunity to talk about those consequences. And at the end of the day, that person may very well say, thank you, ma'am, but I'm going to keep growing my marijuana in my house. It works for me. And then you move right along. You move right along. And so, my sound didn't come through, but there is a sound there from there. You can hear a commercial.
As well as the detrimental health and social impacts of the unlawful use in local communities. Empower yourself with knowledge. Find out more at mmeri.famu.edu. Mary, educate, learn, talk.
I bet you're
Are you curious? Are you curious about medicinal herb? Florida A&M University established MURI to educate the public about medicinal herb, as well as the detrimental health and social impacts of the unlawful use in local communities. Empower yourself with knowledge. Find out more at mmeri.famu.edu. MERI. Educate, learn, talk.
Righty, that's it. I got 5 minutes for questions. Thank you so much.
He's got the mic for you.
Jody James. Jody James, Florida Cannabis Action Network, and if I whisper, you're going to hear me perfectly.
I didn't hear a word you said.
Really? I'm Jody James. I'm with the Florida Cannabis Action Network. So I'm interested in how you are bridging the gap now that all marijuana is legal for somebody. And of course, what I'm referring to is cannabis sativa L as hemp, less than 0.3%, because you were talking about cannabis use in the car, and certainly your medical marijuana use in the car is 100% illegal. That's in statute. Your cannabis that contains more than 0.3% THC, if you use it in the car, that's 100% illegal. They would call that driving under the influence. Hemp, on the other hand, so I'm wondering how you're, and we struggle with this all the time, how to bridge the gap and help people understand something that is so very complicated that half the time my experts don't understand.
That's a very good question. And since I've been attending these conferences for the past year, I've noticed that the hemp question comes up a lot. And I can't answer your question in terms of bridging the gap, but I see a gentleman here who's really wanting to answer you. But in terms of, I think you were talking about the legalities of it, and so what if a cop pulls you over and it's hemp, or no, did I misunderstand?
Hang on.
I said now kind of the answers are changing as more and more products become available. And I just wondered if you're trying to get some components into your program that help everybody understand that there are medical products that are available for everybody. You don't have to have a card. And I just wondered what you were doing with that. It's not black and white. Excuse me.
Thank you. But again, I have to, our foremost mandate is to talk about medical cannabis and to talk about, again, the illegal side of it. But as we have these conversations and as people ask certain questions of our experts that we invite, that question could very well come up and the expert could answer it or perhaps punt it for a later date. But that doesn't mean that we can't bring someone to the table who has that expert knowledge about it and include them in an overall conversation, especially if it is a hot topic in the community. We want to keep our hands on the pulse, our fingers on the pulse of the community, which is why we engage so much, so that we'll know what's happening in terms of what information now do we need to get out to the public to provide even more education. So that's the best answer I can give you from my perspective. But this gentleman, I have 1 minute and 29 seconds left if you want to provide some additional quick information.
Again, my name is Mikhail Harris. Everybody calls me Coach. I'm a Georgia Hemp Association. I've been pushing hemp for the last, since 2014. And yes, believe it or not, I believe that the hemp movement has done more for the cannabis movement than they would recognize. Because if you were to get pulled over and they said, well, you have marijuana in your car, and you said it's hemp. Most people now are letting you go because they have no tools or anything to basically test that on spot. But she is right. We should keep the dialogue to the legalities of what it is, but most definitely you guys need to check out a little bit more hemp because it is not. Do not separate it. It is not. This is marijuana. This is hemp. It's all sativa L. When you say low THC oil, you're actually talking about. You can say marijuana, but you're actually talking about hemp too. So it's all part of the flower.
I can see this could go on for quite a while. I'm seeing hands go up.
Can I say this, Gene, real quick?
Yep.
hemp program right now at FAMU. Please go to the FAMU website or do a Google search and you will find out what's going in the hemp program. There's a program right now focusing on hemp at FAMU. Thank you. My time is up.
All right, well, and Michelle will be around, so if you have questions and you did not get to ask today, please make sure to seek her out. So 80 to 100 years of prohibitionist propaganda will definitely take us some time. The cannabis conversation help us break through the stigma that is still very much attached and alive to marijuana, which is one of the reasons why I pretty exclusively like to say cannabis. Education, communication, I mean, these things are all key in helping us to achieve that end. And clearly, Mary is one of the leaders in the Florida space, providing especially our communities of color the opportunity to engage in these super important conversations. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So I like to do a lot of social media posting, and one of my hashtags is hashtag cannabis is a good medicine. And our next conversation is cannabis is medicine, an MD's perspective from 10 years of recommending marijuana. Dr. Andrew Vanderveer.
Sweet. Hold this or something. I'm going to be bent over the whole time. Anyways, thank you for that talk. It's incredibly important work. Yeah, I'm a medical doctor. I'm going to figure this out here. Let's see. All right, yeah, cannabis is medicine. Yeah, I'm a medical doctor. I've been working on cannabis for 12 years. The big grow I was working on in California was kind of smoky, a lot of fires at the time. So a little intro to talk here. Who's here? A lot of clinicians and people in business, growers, people doing nutrients, different stuff.
Yes.
I really like this picture here. This is from North Carolina. It's from a test plot about 6 years ago. A little rainbow popping up, but a little outline of my talk there. I'm going to talk about who I am, herbal medicine, history of cannabis, endocannabinoid system, some basic science, conditions. I got like 100 slides, so I'm just going to start clicking. All right. This is me, pretty upset with the labor that I was doing out in California. We were trellising out there. So what qualifies me to give this talk? I bought my first bag of weed when I was 14. Actually turned out to be oregano. So yeah, that's from my herbal education. My brother and I, we rolled up a bunch of joints, and we didn't feel anything, so we went to my mom's cabinet, got the oregano. Yeah. Still love that smell. Popped my first seed when I was 15. My parents threw it away. Went to NC State, played football there. Probably got brain damage. Who knows? Is it the weed or the football? I don't know. Chicken or the egg thing. Ended up going to VCU, studied traumatic brain injury. Went to med school at UNC, East Carolina. Did 1 year of internship. Found out I'd become a weed doctor in California, and that's what I did in 2012. Actually was suffering from peripheral neuropathy at the time, and cannabis was something I discovered that was better than, what was I taking? Lyrica, Neurontin. Yeah, it was bad. I got injections in my back. So let's see. Yeah, been recommended for 10 years. California, now Florida. I've seen thousands of patients. Also grew and cured and vacuum sealed 4 pounds of outdoor organics in 2020. So talk to me. I know the guy that knows the guy. Who knows. my Florida certificate, which this course, I don't know, a lot of doctors probably taking it. It tells you nothing about medical marijuana. It just tells you about the legal stuff, about like you can be sued. So
Disciplinary action.
yeah, it's a little weird.
Yep.
Yeah, it's herbal medicine. And Dr. De Silva really talked about this morning. You know, herbs, their whole plant, they're packaged in apples, packaged for us to eat it. You know, fiber, bioflavonoids. You got synergy between all the compounds. With cannabis, especially, of an ensemble effect of all the different cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids working together. And with herbs, you got a lot of history of people using them. They're pretty affordable. You know, for example, you got fruit high in vitamin C with flavonoids, which would help vitamin C uptake versus you know, taking vitamin C pills. So I really like these pictures. On the left is it's a Bushman. That's a guy, and he's got a baby there, and the other guy's a pygmy. Beautiful, healthy people using cannabis. Probably not lab tested cannabis. Maybe not legal. You know, they look pretty healthy. You know, so I think they call it DAGA. Pretty cool. So 80% of the world uses exclusive herbal medicine. So something to think about. Tucson. So what is pharma? You know, it's usually takes existing naturally occurring compounds, you know, mess with them a little bit, patent them, test them on humans, works all right, didn't kill so many people, it's put on the market, starts competition. You know, educate people on how to prescribe them and force you to prescribe them. So cannabis doesn't really fit in this model yet. And, you know, it's pretty wild that, you know, I had no medical training in medical cannabis, but they decided that cannabis was the one herb that we have the exclusive right to prescribe to patients, whereas like naturopathic doctors, other people, you know a lot more. So, another test plot out here. These crops aren't watered, they're not fertilized, but they're out competing the other weeds next to them. So overdose deaths on up like 30% up in 2021. Pretty bad. I lost a couple friends. A lot of people dying from alcohol as well. Obviously, cannabis never killed anyone. This is a picture of one of my plants sleeping. So we're looking at cannabis. Kind of got three categories. It's kind of up for debate. It's a Cannabinaceae family. It's dioecious, means there's male and female. So it's wind pollinated, which can have a lot of effect on hemp farmers versus cannabis farmers, especially like in California. It's really hard to get a hemp license because you have such big bucks and having these, you know, all female plants. This is what marijuana is. So a lot of genetic diversity, really non-toxic. So you get females, little hairs. The males have basically little pollen sacs. So a little schematic of a fertilized female on the right, male on the left, and then that's, you might know what that is down there. It's got both kinds of flowers. You know, some people like, some people don't. So they three kind of plant types. You know, sativa is kind of thought of as your equatorial marijuana, really tall. Usually going to be more of a soaring feeling, uplifting. Indica is thought of as your drug narcotic, more I guess you'd think of Afghanistan or something like that. And then ruderalis is kind of like a ditchweed, autoflower. So, and the shapes of leaves. Farm. So postulated cannabis, you know, long time ago, came from that kind of region, it's been spreading for a while. Can't really read that, but it says Neolithic, ancient times, and there's a really great quote. It says, from this Germanic guy, 1500, it says, for those who have cramps, it should be burned and held to the nose. So they were talking about inhaling cannabis smoke in the 1500s. Formatting issues, but reached the New World with African slaves and indentured servants, a lot of times through Jamaica. So, a lot of usefulness to the plant, obviously, both hemp and cannabis. A lot of modern day uses. So, just a little close up of some sour D's while growing. So anybody know it's Dr. William O'Shaughnessy. He really brought cannabis to the West. He was in India studying there. There was a lot of wars between the British and India and colonialism. But he did a lot of interesting things. He was responsible for helping develop the telegraph, IV therapy, and then he brought cannabis back and brought back to England, and there's some great quotes, and one of I really like this one, valuable therapeutic of some Indian vegetable remedies to construct a pharmacopoeia for the poor to whom the costly remedies of Europe and South America are accessible. So herbal designer drugs and things, if you have great insurance, great, but cannabis is just a great medicine for everybody, and it's really affordable. Used across the world, this is about prohibition, really. So, people have had their heads chopped off for cannabis, and people have had, it's pretty wild. A lot of history, but modern history, William Randolph Hearst had a lot of timberlands, and the decorticator was coming out, going to affect his profits at the same time. Marijuana, a lot of racism, fear campaign, lies, DuPont Plastics. You can get into a whole conspiracy thing, I'm not. You had your tax stamp come out in 1937, which kind of put it into it. And, reefer madness drug. So, there's a pretty racist quote by that dude. Bad dude. Want to forget the bad dudes out there. And obviously, racial disparity still exists today, So, think about marijuana, you think about hemp, obviously that pretty tall plant on the left, but these are both hemp farms. Again, we were talking about, hemp is the government designation, 0.3% THC or less. So it's really the way you grow it, the way you plant it, do you take the males out, or are you planting different seeds? And that was a really difficult question that you were asked, because it really is the conundrum now. Because I live in South Carolina currently. You can walk into really any store and buy a 30 milligram Delta-9 THC edible as long as it's less than 0.3% by dry weight. So as long as it's hemp derived.
In Florida too.
So it's really competition. It's really, regulation needs to happen. It's going to get weird out there.
It already is.
Yeah, THCP, THCO, spraying stuff on. So it's going to get heavily regulated. Yeah, you can grow a lot of hemp without regulation. Some good trichomes from that sour D. We call it that sticky icky. So cannabis is really good medicine for all these conditions. I've definitely seen people in my practice with all these problems. Me personally, I've benefited from a lot of the stuff. You start talking about COVID and people, want to shut you down and stuff, but it really is the inflammation of COVID that gets you. Heard this morning about the great anti-inflammatory effects, but topically, eczema, psoriasis. You start talking about prion diseases. Like really, they don't know how to deal with that. So, this is me back in 2011, before Facebook was, what it is today, y'all. I went to visit my buddy in California, and they had this truck out there, and I posted that they were doing recommendations. Wow, they have all these things, migraine, ADHD. I'm like, how can it be that cannabis, this has to be a lie? It's like, how does it help with so many conditions? And it really is the endocannabinoid system. It is a system that's going to really revolutionize medicine. I think it's throwing a lot of monkey wrenches into everybody's plans. Science is still emerging, has a big role throughout the whole body. So receptors, CB1, CB2, is there a CB3 receptor? I got more questions than I do answers on this. So you got the endogenous anandamide, academyl ethanol, can anybody say that word? AEA.
I can't remember.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes, thank you, sir. Yeah. All right. So, and you've also got these enzymes that synthesize and degrade these cannabinoids, which are ultimately important too, because you want the building blocks, and then you want the scissors that chop them up, and that stuff. So these are the ones. I'm not going to say. Really interesting the way cannabis works at the nerve synapse. It actually tells the nerve behind it to not fire. So really unique in the way neuronal transmission happens. It's a review paper saying modulating the endocannabinoid system activity may have therapeutic potential in almost all diseases affecting humans. So big time. And all animals have an endocannabinoid system except for insects. Pretty interesting. Pretty big deal. Sorry. So Ethan Russo is a really great neurologist. He's been in the cannabis space for a long time. He has some theories about some conditions that we really don't have answers for, and that they might be an endocannabinoid deficiency disease. So let's get into those. Phantom limb. That must be painful. So this lady, I definitely would say you guys should look her up. Jo Cameron, I think she's in the UK, but basically she had a terrible car accident, walked away. I think she had some crazy compound fracture, and doctors, she basically had like no pain and no anxiety about the whole thing, and they're like, what's going on? It turns out she has a deficiency in an enzyme that actually breaks down endogenous anandamide. So she has 2 times the normal anandamide that we all, which is the natural cannabinoid. So that's kind of the big deal. So and CBD has a lot of different mechanisms of action. One of them that we think is it allows natural cannabinoids to hang around for longer. That's a pretty big deal why CBD is so good. In particular, CBDA. We'll talk about that later. Maybe you're responsible for the runner's high. You could find other cannabinoid-mimetics or phyto, I'm not sure exactly, but raw chocolate, not raw cacao, not actually chocolate that's been roasted. In truffles and echinacea. Sticky. So when you talk about cannabis, you're talking about the female flowers primarily. You're going to find cannabinoids and other compounds in the male pollen, in the roots, and the stems, and some of the bigger leaves, but mostly the trichomes, fat-soluble terpenoids, THCA, CBD, CBC, a lot of different cannabinoids, hundreds of them. They actually incorporate into the bilipid layer of our cell membranes. That's why you can fail a drug test like 45 days out. It's really interesting because our body sort of releases them as needed. So it's a great medicine you'd think about. Our body just kind of naturally has a little storage of cannabinoids. Terpenes, big deal. I don't know a whole ton about them yet, but they're coming on. So also there's phenols, flavonoids, and if you say you got sour diesel, great. Well, it depends on this particular strain, where it's grown, how it's grown, who grow it, how long it's been dried for, how it's processed. It's an ancient Chinese guy with a weed stick. This thing, oh, that's cool. So THC, THCV, and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. So THC, the psychoactivity lasts a lot longer than THCV. Now we're talking about some other cannabinoids, THCP, which has a 7-chain. And some of these synthetic ones that have caused a lot of problems for people have like a 13 chain, which can be way psychoactive.
Too psychoactive.
This talks a little bit about decarboxylation, which is a pretty big deal. THCA is not psychoactive, but it has a lot of great medicinal properties. So I think we can definitely be using a lot more THCA. It's great to have some THC on board, but you might want to have a lot of THCA. Can y'all read that? Sorry. So there's a lot of kinds of THC. Like again, I talked about THCP, THCO. Usually helps, can help us forget things, which can be nice. Because you can't remember everything. Anxiety, it's kind of plus minus. I like to use CBD with it for sure. It definitely can increase heart rate. And I always used to say, I like to say to avoid isolate. I mean, THC isolate is what it is, and you can get that in Marinol. There's a patent from way back in the day dealing with Delta 8. Raphael Mechoulam is one of the original sort of discoverers of the receptors and everything going on. So yeah, this is kind of like the issue with a lot of stuff is, these kids want to have a good time, and Delta 8 is a naturally occurring cannabinoid found in very small amounts in plants. It has been shown to be effective for nausea, especially in kids. It is made in the lab though, and a lot of times you can buy Delta 8 flower, it's sprayed back on there. And there's your difference right there, the difference between, see that bond, that's THC, Delta 9, Delta 8. Not a huge difference, but the government seems to think so. You know what I'm saying? But it's been a real boom to hemp farmers because they have all this CBD flower, and so what are they going to do with it? Well, they're going to transform it into Delta-8 and sell it to people that need some psychoactivity. I don't know if y'all have experience with Delta-8. It is definitely psychoactive. It's relaxing. I felt like it was a little more devoid of the sort of like interesting thoughts that come along with Delta-9. I like the head nods. Keep them coming, y'all. So this is a COA, Certificate of Analysis. Actually, so I worked on a farm in Colorado, and this guy does a really great extraction. He's a USDA organic farmer. He does like a really cold extraction in ethanol. This shows a couple different cannabinoids. CBG, and obviously CBD. So this is a decarb sample, and again, I think raw and decarb have a place. So. Yeah, I mean, I don't read too many of these, but let's see. So CBD and CBDA particularly. So our body actually decarbs CBDA once it's in the body. It doesn't decarb THCA. And some papers I've been reading say that it's actually more efficient for our body to decarb the CBDA. So we really should be using raw CBDA. So it's something to think about. A lot of great effects. Because of the way he extracts, the CBG is going to be present. I mean, a lot of these if you use heat to extract, and if you use heat a lot, it's going to degrade a lot of the other cannabinoids. A little bit about the terpenes. They modulate the cannabinoids. They have their own effects. Blood-brain barrier. Y'all familiar with the mango? Is that a myth? Is
No.
anybody? Do you think it's pretty
It's
real?
true.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right. It's true.
mercy.
Okay. Works for you. That's all that matters. Yeah, synthetic cannabinoids. I don't know if y'all have ever tried the synthetic cannabinoids. Pretty weird stuff. There's been a lot of research, obviously pharma wants to patent something and get people to take it. There's been deaths. So I don't think it's very safe to tamper with the cannabinoid system, other than with natural plants that we have thousands of years of experience with. Here are some of those research chemicals, and here's one of those really long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's the HU210. That's a big one. Doctor, can you prescribe marijuana to relieve the boredom of sitting in my living room? Seen a lot of patients in different. California was a lot more laid back. You could prescribe cannabis for anything. Hangnail. If and when you do go to the doctor, like wear a neck brace, try, I'm not saying lie, but like at least,
I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that.
These are just jokes. Just jokes. It's not a prescription, not legally allowed to prescribe it. So it's a recommendation or a certification. Now you can be prescribed Marinol, so that's something interesting. So if you you want to use cannabis and you live in a state or maybe in a situation, definitely try to get your doctor to prescribe you Marinol. That way if you fail a drug test, you say, well, hey, I'm taking Marinol. Flush the pills down the toilet. I don't know, don't buy them or, lose them. So these are federal patients. They get Mississippi-grown weed that's shipped to RTP in Raleigh and then rolled there and sent in tins. So they get federal marijuana. So pretty wild, really bad weed. This is a sign I saw just driving down the road. A lot of different laws with the states. So this is a 99 plant certificate. I think it was, how many kilo? I don't know. Up to 2 pounds that I could prescribe people. So people like these. That was good. Just say that. This is the California permitted conditions, basically anything. So Prop 215 is 1996. It was pretty Wild West. A lot of the dispensaries were basically just a button that you would ring on a nondescript door, and the armed guard would answer the door. So they still have medical cannabis. You'd save money on the taxes. This is obviously the Florida check boxes that physicians are faced with. And sometimes if you check other boxes, they make you check more boxes and send in more paperwork, so then you end up just checking the box that's kind of, I mean, you spend more time with your patients constantly on the other things, or you do more paperwork, It's like, well, It's $78 a year in the state of Florida. Can't grow at home. Go see a doctor every 7 months. Yeah, people talk about diversion. I worry about like, okay, well, this person is gonna be getting all this weed and selling it. And, well, at least it's good weed. I mean, well,
Safe
it's,
use.
It's way safer. Don't you want them smoking the weed you grew? Wouldn't you rather have that than something with fentanyl that came in on a mule and from a tunnel from Mexico? You tell me. Yeah, they track every single milligram in Florida. Pretty interesting. And of course, some people get their medical marijuana card, and people talked about this before, and they never purchase marijuana, and you can see it. And it's like, how's it going? It's like, great. It's like, all right, you never bought anything, okay. So, at least buy one bag, and keep putting it back in the original bag or something, be smart about it, I'm just trying to get people, So.
Oh, jeez.
These are jokes, yeah. So,
Sort of.
a lot of different ways to get cannabis into your system. IV would be interesting. IM, who knows? I might know who that is. There you go. Yeah. Somebody did him dirty. So obviously he was inhaling. If you ever want to hear about, smoking marijuana is bad for you, look up Donald Tashkin, UCLA, National Institute Drug Abuse, researched cannabis 40 years, didn't find any problems. Actually found that if you smoke cigarettes and cannabis, or if you just smoke cigarettes, you're better off with adding some weed. Yeah, so I never found cancer, emphysema, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, nothing. Vaporizing probably better. Probably best way is pull hot air past your nice organic flower. Option they like. Vapor temperatures for a lot of different cannabinoids. So basically, what this slide is saying, like, it matters what you're smoking out of, what you're inhaling out of. Like your friend's bong might make you feel different than your pipe. Or using a hemp wick, stuff like this. So there's a little happy area, usually vaporizing. I think it's like around 340 or something like that. It's good for kids. I don't think it damages the brain personally. Anybody else? Anybody in the brain damage category? Yeah. Usually, tinctures, full, broad spectrum would be basically devoid of THC. If you can't have THC because of the drug test, then use the broad, but you really do want some THC in there a little bit. Again, isolate, not really into it. A lot of carrier oils, MCT, something I like. Alcohol can be a good one too, faster absorb, but if people abstain from alcohol, you don't want to be putting them at that risk. A lot of good technology out there, nanoparticles, so who knows, if you can afford it, go for it. It's nice, Rick Simpson oil is good. Rub it on your gums. Let's see. With edibles, start with a milligram or two. THC, CBD is going to be your friend. Basically, CBD pulls down the effects of THC and stretches it out through time. So if you're freaking out on THC, if you have CBD vape or something like that around, it can be really helpful. Some good ratios, 1-to-1, either way. Edibles take a lot longer and last for days. There's a transformation that happens in the liver metabolite, 11-hydroxy. A lot of people say take it with a fatty meal. It's Death Valley. Great on skin, tremendous. People talk about skin cancer. It's originally how Rick Simpson got talking about it. I think it's great for hypersensitivity reactions. Excuse me. I won't even go back. This is me in front of a weed clinic I was working at in California. Pretty wild. Any contraindications using cannabis? Drug laws, if you're drug tested. There are certain medications. If you do have a reaction, definitely check with your prescribing doctor. They're pretty rare, but some immune modulators, and if it's processed by the liver, definitely consult with your prescribing doctor. Just a couple of weeds. Let's see. So Marinol, that's medical marijuana from the government. What is it? Synthetic delta-9 THC. It's actually Schedule 3. It's hilarious. These are the ingredients. Doesn't seem like medicine. Super expensive. It's only good for, you only use it in anorexia and AIDS. I mean, you can use it off-label too, but yeah. So, yeah, I've never tried, but I can imagine. Epidiolex, I think is what it is. This is a CBD isolate grown in the UK. It's available in US for seizures, and it is a CBD isolate. So, Not a huge fan. Really expensive. Those are the ingredients. And if you didn't know it, the UK is the world's largest producer and exporter of cannabis in the world. Very interesting, but it's illegal for them. That's one of their grow houses out there in the UK. They also make Sativex, which I think is probably a good medicine. So you might see that in your Pyxis system or in your hospital soon. I think it's a 1-to-1 ratio, so I think there's just one formulation. Again, expensive. So just some of the more of that sour diesel, kitty cat, some San Pedro in the back. So future CBD was inactive, 15 years ago? Where did Delta 8 come from? THCV, raw, the leaves, fresh frozen, that's your top shelf really, if you can do fresh frozen rosin, roots, leaves, pollen. I don't have answers, I got a lot of questions. So, what it all boils down to, finger hash. Modulation of the endocannabinoid system may be of utmost importance for human and animal wellness. People are going to keep using cannabis. It's a magic plant. Use it wisely. Some of the references I used. Just a few little health tips I got to squeeze in, guys. Know what you're ingesting. Try to breathe in through your nose. Pretty important. Breathe in through the nose. Walk a lot. Avoid processed foods. Stay hydrated. Get good sleep. Breathing through your nose. If you have sleep apnea, get that looked at. What's your thoughts? This is a fun little spider. Any questions?
And if you have questions, you're going to have to catch Dr. Vanderveer because we are on a time constraint. So we're going to move along to one of my favorite topics and really one of my primary focuses as the Flowery when I'm focusing on content creation. So we have a little change in the schedule. Dr. Wayback will not be joining us, but talking on terpene-rich formulations for symptom-specific control, we've got Dr. Al Schumann, who is the CFO at ComCan Healthcare Medical Cannabis Clinic out of Delray, and a long-standing colleague and dear, dear, dear friend of mine, Nicole Wicker, who is the CEO of Altopa Oakland.
Perfect timing because my smartwatch just told me to move, so now I'm moving. And yeah, I'm just joking. I'm trying to act like him. I can't do that great of a job. So we are learning so much every day in this industry. How many of you have learned something over the past couple days? If you have, stand up. Please. If you've learned 2 things, go like this. If you learned 3 things, go like this. If you learned 4 things, go like this. If you learned 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay. Just gotta wake up and move a little bit. Like my watch told me. All right. So we are learning every day. It is like, to me, still the first day in this industry. But we have also learned a lot in the past 25 years. I'm going to try to go really fast on what we know so we can all come to an agreement here. We all have an endocannabinoid system. It was discovered in 1988. This endocannabinoid system is comprised of 2 main receptors, CB1 receptors, primarily located in your brain, CB2 receptors, primarily located in your gut. We also produce endogenous cannabinoids that are very similar molecularly to cannabis ingredients. So over the next 10 years, 1997 to 2007, we discovered 5 more receptors. And basically the endocannabinoid system has more receptors throughout your body than any other system. The purpose of it is to maintain homeostasis, to maintain balance. And as your body, or as you are exposed to different stressors, your body is producing these endogenous cannabinoids in order to keep your body in balance. Some of these block receptors, some open them either directly or indirectly. So these endogenous cannabinoids interact differently with your receptors. 3 types of compounds in a cannabis plant. Number 1, cannabinoids. The difference, it's only produced by a cannabis plant. Think of your C's and your T's, CBG, CBD, CBA, CBDA, THC, etc. Terpenes, essential oils, there are over 20,000. I just heard 30,000. They are in plants, fruits. They are also in a cannabis plant. And now they have discovered 400 different terpenes in a cannabis plant. The third category is flavonoids. We will save that for next year. Or two. So what's interesting, when you start thinking about the different cannabinoids and the receptors, which one block the receptors versus which ones open the receptors? Delta 8, Delta 9, CBG, and CBN are agonists, and they open your receptors, whereas CBD doesn't open either receptors. CBD actually acts as an antagonist. So it has indirect medicinal benefits, but it doesn't directly open a receptor. So depending on what you are trying to treat, you're going to use a combination of these different cannabinoids to get the best patient outcomes. Terpenes, Dr. Newton Terrell did a wonderful job of explaining terpenes and the medicinal benefits of different terpenes. This is a simplified summary of some of the main terpenes. It's important to note that terpenes work in conjunction with cannabinoids to modulate the cannabinoids and target specific medical conditions. So beta-caryophyllene is the only terpene that acts like a cannabinoid in that it actually opens your CB2 receptors. We actually have beta-caryophyllene in all of our formulations because it, similar to CBD, it helps with pain, anxiety, neurological disorders, all sorts of medical conditions. If you add humulene to beta-caryophyllene, if you're treating a patient with pain and inflammation, we are finding that the patient outcomes are much better when you combine humulene with the beta-caryophyllene. Limonene, Dr. Newton mentioned that it's great for anxiety. What we have found is anxiety is a very personal medical condition. Some people with anxiety and PTSD respond well to limonene. It's also an antidepressant. Others with anxiety don't respond well to limonene, in which case we will move them into the more sedative terpenes like linalool, myrcene, and terpenoline. So when you're treating a patient with anxiety, it really comes down to the terpene combinations. And then alpha-pinene, I always think of it as memory. It's great for neurological disorders, Alzheimer's patients, or if you're just wanting some neuroprotectant to help with memory, add alpha-pinene to your formulation. So to continue this, we think of the 3 major medical conditions that patients use when they're using medical marijuana: pain, anxiety, and sleep. So when you start combining these different cannabinoids and terpenes, you can really start to understand which of these ingredients need to be in specific formulations. And it's very important, again, when you're talking about the receptors and the cannabinoids and the terpenes, to know which of these ingredients to use to treat this specific medical condition. And now Al Schulman's going to speak. He's the CFO of Comcam.
Hi, thanks, Nicole. My name's Al Schulman. I'm not Dr. Luis Lioge way back, who was younger, better looking, and more interesting. In fact, I'm not a doctor at all, and all I got to say about that is tough. I'm going to talk anyway. So Nicole talked a lot about the combinations of ingredients and how they map to specific conditions. So we have a general understanding of what components we want to use to treat different conditions. And as Nicole mentioned, we're learning that partly by personalizing, by experimenting, by modifying as we go. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the difficulties in doing that in a clinical setting. So first, cannabis strains have a high degree of variation in which cannabinoids are in them, and especially in the terpene profiles in them. So if we're going to look for a certain combination of terpenes, we're going to have to find the strain that happens to have them, and then that strain is going to have an associated cannabinoid profile that also may or may not be what we're looking for. And you can do whatever you want. You can take the raw flower, you can take extracts, you can convert it to vapes, you can convert it to tinctures, but you can't get terpenes that aren't in the plant, right? You're going to get the same blend of terpenes and the same blend of components no matter how you process that particular strain. And then if you find a strain that you like, product supply is inconsistent. Knowing I have a lot of friends from treatment centers and also people from the Office of Medical Marijuana Use in here, I'll be a little bit reluctant to say this, but most medical marijuana treatment centers are not medically focused. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And also, most commercial CBD products, now you're seeing them in Walmart and gas stations and, wherever you look, a lot of them don't have the potency. So in Florida now we have hemp testing, and at least the quality can be assured, but the potency is whatever's stated. So, we talked about research into CBD. I think the study we were looking at is looking at something like 200 milligrams a day. Some of the products you see out there are 300 milligrams in a bottle that's supposed to last a month. So basically you're giving, 10 milligram doses, and you have patients come in and say, I tried CBD, it didn't work. Or I tried marijuana, it didn't work. Well, given the volatility in the strains, which we'll talk about, that's not entirely surprising. So before it changes, let me ask, how many people are not familiar with the names of medical marijuana strains? Everybody here seems to be pretty familiar with that, so this isn't exactly going to be surprising that this isn't, named like Ambien or, normal medicines. So to look at the strains, I used some information I found from the Emerald Cup, which is a competition in California for cannabis connoisseurs. And they actually, it's maybe a little hard to read the categories, but there's Jacks and Haze, there's Tropical and Floral, there's OGs and Gas, there's Sweets and Dreams, there's Dessert, which is not what you eat after dinner, and there's Exotics. And these are broadly classified by the terpene blends to have similar mixes, which actually for cannabis connoisseurs is kind of what we're trying to do medically, right? Find the right terpene blends. And there's a site down here if you want to look up Emerald Cup terpenes. It's really an interesting article. So let's look at some of the strains that they looked at. So if we were looking to treat somebody for anxiety, and we're looking for 3 key terpenes, limonene, linalool, oh God, I blew it already. God, this is now a block. Linalool, linalool and myrcene. Limonene, linalool, and myrcene. There we go. This one, the myrcene's the bottom bar. You may not be able to tell it, but it's the purple one on the bottom. The limonene is the yellow, which you can see is kind of small, and the linalool is the third from the bottom, which is also kind of small. So here you found one that has one of the 3 terpenes you're looking for, but it really doesn't have the other. And this is the Jackson Hayes strains include such medically derived products as Classic Trainwreck, Jack Herer, who was a cannabis advocate, Durban Poison, which is what every doctor wants to recommend, and Super Lemon Haze. So, you know, I've told this story to Nicole. When we started this, my mother's turning 92. She was 87 when she became a medical marijuana patient. And she came in, I said, how did your appointment with Dr. Davis go? And she said, oh, great, he told me I should take Granddaddy Purple. And as she likes to say, it was 9-inch hammer. So, you know, this is where we are as doctors talking to patients who don't have experience with marijuana about product selection at our treatment centers. So now we're going to keep on looking for what we want, and now I can look at one. This is from the tropical and floral class, and you see this one really doesn't have it. It's low levels on the very bottom, low levels on the third from the bottom, and low levels on the yellow. So we're going to rule out such strains as Super Skunk, Hawaiian, In the Pines, and Dream Queen. And we, you know, our patients may not benefit from that, from those types of medicine as much as others. So the dessert class, here we've got high level of limonene, low levels of linalool and myrcene in such classes as Classic Bubba Kush, GSC, which does not stand for Girl Scout cookies, because that would be illegal, gelatos, and cakes, which is what everybody wants to indulge in, I guess. Okay, so now we go to the OGs and gas class, where we have such strains as OG Kush, Chem Dog, Sour Diesel, and Gorilla Glue. And here we found a pretty good match, right? So we've got a high yellow bar, we got a high purple bar, third from the bottom, and a high violet bar for myrcene at the very bottom. So we have lots of limonene, linalool, and myrcene. So we finally found a pretty good fit. So really, that's great. So now I got a couple questions. Are you always going to be, who's going to have this? Are you always going to be able to find it? Probably not. If you find it, how much consistency is there from batch to batch? And we've got some evidence that there's not a lot of consistency from batch to batch. So you're going to have two versions of Durban Poison that have massively different terpene profiles, right? And then, best of all, you get to go to your mother and say, go to the dispensary and you want to get Gorilla Glue, which is what we all want to do with our elderly patients. So, you know, there are some real barriers to finding the right mix. And also, so now I've matched the terpenes. Now I've got, you know, a product with maybe 20% THC or something like that I'm giving to a patient and telling them, you know, use this for anxiety when you go to work, which isn't going to happen. So if I find the right product, I can't modify the THC content, and you know, I don't want them getting high in the daytime. I may want them using THC to go to bed at night, but just to find the terpene profile, that's before I even get to whether it has the right cannabinoid profile or the right, you know, the right other profile. So this is really, you know, the challenge we face, and fortunately we've started working with Nicole and Altopa to find ways to say, how do we get the right components to our patients at the right time and in the right mix so that, you know, for daytime and nighttime, so they can get the best results possible.
Our company has developed a product called the O-Blend. It is the first device that can create very precise, consistent, personalized botanical formulations with pharmaceutical precision. If you think about that, that is huge in the botanical industry, because you can't really turn plants into, quote, medicine, because medicine is supposed to be consistent. You're supposed to know what is actually exactly going to happen if you take this pill. But it's not that way with plant medicine. Or you may find something that works and you can't find it again and again and again. So the only way they solve this in the pharmaceutical world is they turn it into a synthetic product. And we know that synthetic products have negative side effects, and on and on and on and on. So we have the Oblin now. If you think of an inkjet printer, it has canisters. Canisters are filled with a variety of cannabinoids, terpenoids, eventually flavonoids whenever doctors and patients are ready to add flavonoids, basically anything botanical and healthy. It uses a technology called microfluidics, so each one of the ingredients can be dispensed in less than 1 microliter if needed. And some of these terpenes are actually really potent, so that's where this comes into play. So let's go back to the pain and inflammation example. Now we can look at these charts that are all over the internet and these clinical studies, and we can see which ingredients will work for pain and inflammation, including the cannabinoids and each one of the terpenes. Then we can start developing formulations using these cannabinoids. How many milligrams of CBD do we want? CBG, CBN, delta 8, delta 9. Then we can also decide how many milligrams or portions of milligrams we want of each one of these terpenes. Then we can turn them into formulations. These formulations actually started with Dr. Ethan Russo. We partnered with him, and he gave us formulations for Alzheimer's, pain, sleep, anxiety. His pain formulation did not have CBG in it. And as you look down the levels, the amount of CBG increases with each level. And we add CBN later so we can see the impact that CBN has on patients. We didn't have CBG in level 1 and level 2 when we started, but all of our patients were responding much better with CBG included in their pain and inflammation formulation. So now we have CBG in all of our pain formulations. And you don't have to start a patient with level 1, you can start them with level 3. Also, the delta 8, because we can ship nationally, we have delta 8. We don't have delta 9. And we're finding a lot of great information about delta 8. You know, now that we have something consistent, we can collect data that matters, because if you're collecting data on a product that's inconsistent, then the data doesn't matter. So it's funny, if you read the research, it all says delta 8 is about 50% as intoxicating as delta 9. So when we started, our level 1 was 10 milligrams of delta 8. And mind you, this is in one dropper. So they're very potent. She's laughing because she knows she works at one of our clinics, Kelly King's clinic. And we got some patients too stoned because we just assumed 10 milligrams in a dropper, and we tell everybody to start with a quarter of a dropper, so it was 2.5 milligrams of delta 8, which is supposed to be 50% the potency of delta 9. Well, that is not the case. That is not true. But everybody's different. So some of our patients can actually do 50 milligrams in one dropper of delta 8, and they don't feel a thing. Others can only tolerate like 1 milligram of delta 8. Everybody's different. The other thing to point out is once we go down to level 4, we double the terpene amounts. We want to keep the terpene content within a certain percent of the active ingredients. And when you get to level 4, in 1 ml dropper, we have about 235 milligrams of the different cannabinoids, so we can start increasing the terpenes. We can also see what effect this has on patients. If you double the amount of terpenes, does it help? So it's really interesting information we're having. We also realize that because this is new, a lot of doctors don't know how to essentially write a prescription for botanical medicine. they don't know exactly how much of each terpene to include. So that's why we partnered with people like Dr. Ethan Russo to give us a starting point, and the doctor can select any one of the levels for the patient, and they can say either they want TH-free or formulations with Delta 8. And this shows the percentage of each one of the terpenes. And I always say that's just step one, because this is personalized medicine. But you can't personalize it unless you get the feedback from the patient. So the patient receives the first formulation, we get the feedback from the patient, and based on the patient's feedback, we can adjust the formulation. So each patient receives the perfect personalized formulation that's working for their individualized needs. We've gotten really good results with our pain patients. This includes only patients that have provided feedback. About 25% don't provide feedback, so to us, we can't include them in this analysis. But of the people that provide feedback, we have 91 patients that have good to great, mostly great, patient outcomes from this cannabis medicine. Now we're going to take anxiety. The reason I'm doing pain versus anxiety. Pain, we've nailed the terpenes. We know what terpenes work for pain and inflammation. Anxiety is very, very personal, like I said. So this first formulation, see, again, we're populating the terpenes and the cannabinoids that are supposed to work for anxiety. Then we create formulations. So there's our formulation. Formulation number 1, or treatment plan number 1 for anxiety. This was from Dr. Ethan Russo. What we have discovered is some patients don't respond well to limonene. So we start with this formulation, get their feedback. If they didn't like it, then we move them to the next formulation, which is called Serenity. So we keep the levels of the cannabinoids the same, or the ingredients the same, which is on the upper right-hand side. And you'll see our 3 different anxiety terpene profiles, which the second one has more myrcene, terpenoline. So maybe somebody needs their mind to stop racing and calm down, and a different person is depressed and they need more limonene. And again, it's all personal. Everybody's different. Outcomes. So first of all, 24% of our patients require a customized formulation. The remainder find a formulation that works from one of ours listed on the sheet. The first column is, and it's the light blue is great results, the middle one is good results, and the third one is no benefit. So a lot of patients, about 30%, have good to great results from just their first formulation. For most patients, it takes one adjustment. So just give us that feedback, tell us what you need. You know, some sleep patients, they've said, I slept the best I ever have. I didn't wake up till 4 a.m. And we're like, well, what time do you want to wake up? 7 a.m. would be great. Okay, so we add a little bit more myrcene, terpenoline, and we just nail it. And then definitely by 2 adjustments, we get the patients into a formulation that works. Most of our patients are pain, anxiety, or have insomnia. We have some that have cancer, autism, depression. And that is it. We have 3 minutes for questions. Anybody have a question?
So is there a website, for example, I work with 16 states where they don't have medical marijuana laws, and everyone's been looking at Delta 8 as a substitute. Is there a website, a doctor in Oklahoma or some dreadful state that
So we have a website. It's called oblin.com, but we have a different portal for our healthcare providers.
So you sign them in.
Because, you know, there's certain things you just
But
can't
there's
say.
a portal that, just like other things we do in doctor's offices,
Yeah.
anywhere in the country.
Yes.
Great.
Yes, and I'll tell you a little bit about our Delta 8 results. It depends on the medical condition. So if you need to go to sleep, if you have a problems getting to sleep, we do much better with Delta 8 than no Delta 8. If it's a matter of staying asleep, we don't need Delta 8 because we can do things like that with the terpenes like myrcene. Anxiety is about 50-50. 50% of our anxiety and PTSD need Delta 8, just a small amount. The others are getting plenty of relief without Delta 8. And then pain is about 50-50 as well. Yes, right now the Oberlin is creating tinctures. All the active ingredients are dispensed from this dispense port, and then you can insert different containers underneath. So we can eventually do topicals. We have a place where you can screw vaporizers, create nasal sprays, things like that. But yeah, right now we're just doing tinctures. Yes. Yes. So right now we are focused on the state of Florida. We love Florida. We find out where that patient lives, and if they live in a state that Delta 8 is prohibited, then we just tell them they can't have Delta 8. Yep. It's a botanical compounding pharmacy. Yep. Yep. Yes.
Would it be legal for you to put Delta 9 in it if the Delta 9 came from a hemp plant?
We would love Delta 9 in our Oberlin. What's interesting is the laws because you don't have consistency. Right now, the law is you create a big batch, you send off samples, and as long as those samples are within a certain percent, then all of those products are stamped with the same label. So it's okay to have a 15% variance in your medicine. And with us, we actually print personalized labels. We're so accurate, we're safer, we can control the amount of Delta 9, but there's not a law for us right now. So what we do sometimes is we can partner with the Delta 9 company, and it can be an adjunct, this and this. Yes? Did anybody else have a question? All right, thank you.
And of course, Nicole and Altopa Oblend have an exhibit space if you have any further questions. So we're entering into the last top of this session. After Dr. Smith speaks, we're going to have a refreshment break next door until 3:30. So our next speaker is Dr. Gregory Smith with Gregory L. Smith, Inc., and he is going to talk on hair regrowth with novel hemp extracts.
This is a.
Oh, snap!
Man, that guy got it right, man. You guys got it right, man. This is a tough hack to follow, so especially Dr. Vandermeer. So thank you. How does this work? I just press this. The middle? Yeah. Okay. So I'm Dr. Greg Smith. My partner for the two research studies I'm about to show you was John Citino, who was the primary investigator for Rogaine and Propecia back in the 80s and 90s. He is 84 years old. This is a very recent photo. I don't know what he's doing, but anyways, he was lovely to work with for, to be in his footsteps after Rogaine and then Propecia. So while you read these, I basically am a board-certified residency trained in preventive medicine, was in the military for 12 years. I got out in California where I learned about cannabis, had to take a 3-day course about 22 years ago. After that course, I realized that cannabis was for getting high if you were really sick, and that way you didn't care that you were sick. That was the 3-day summary. Over the years, I was very, very disappointed and mad that we weren't taught about the endocannabinoid system. We weren't taught any real thing. it was just very frustrating. And I've trained a couple thousand doctors since then. Eventually ended up writing a textbook a couple years ago, the first textbook, peer-reviewed textbook that's used in medical school and pharmacy school now throughout North America. But there was none. So finally we could all agree on one basic set of tenets in the medical community, and then of course it's expanded dramatically in the last couple of years. Another book I wrote most recently, they came to me as one of the world's largest book publishers to write a book on using cannabis for chronic pain and to get people off opioids. So a wonderful addition, I think, to what's out there. This isn't an advertisement, but I do like to promote my books because I'm proud of them. And this is for patients, basically 10th grade reading level, talks about 25 conditions and how to empower the average individual to use CBD, this amazingly safe oil, just CBD for these 25 conditions. So we won't go over this, other than I'm going to focus on the endocannabinoid system in hair follicles. So you heard a couple times about the ECS. So why would hair follicles have all these tons of CB1 receptors and some CB2? Well, remember, the ECS is about homeostasis. And one of its primary homeostasis is thermal homeostasis, so our body temperature. So way back when we used to be covered with a lot more hair than we are now, we used our hair to maintain our temperature, and that would determine how much energy we'd have to put into our body or use up. And so you will be seeing cannabinoids, especially THCV and CBDV, used to treat the metabolic syndrome. Lots of research coming out on that. You'll be seeing some very nice therapeutic benefits. So on the follicle then are CB1 receptors, and if we block that receptor, the hair shaft will grow longer, and the matrix cells will make more matrix, so the hair column will get thicker. So you have thicker, longer hair. This is not a Clairol commercial. If you stimulate WNT signaling at the bottom there, you will turn a sleeping hair follicle into a live growing hair follicle. So a couple different ways we can stimulate the hair follicle using cannabinoids. Briefly, the first study I did was CBD in 2019. We did not have commercially available THCV or CBDV back in 2019. Those two cannabinoids I just call the varins. They're the only two cannabinoids out of the 178 we just heard about that act like this. So they are unlike any other of the cannabinoids, and that's why I call them novel cannabinoids. They go on the CB1 receptor that the varins do, not CBD. The varins go onto the CB1 receptor and just sit there and neutrally block it. They don't let anything happen at the receptor. CBD, which we did have in 2019, goes onto the receptor, partially blocks it through indirect mechanisms, doesn't sit on the receptor. It does some stuff to the side of the receptor, so the receptor doesn't work as well. So same idea, we're partially blocking the receptor. So I expected to see some effects on the hair growth with using CBD back in 2019. So the first study was done, 35 patients. There was a 6-month trial, once a day. It pretty much looked like a Rogaine foam dispenser. They put it on once a day. Very similar in many ways, if anyone's familiar with using Rogaine, the same sort of application process. This is what we used back then. Unfortunately, Dr. Satino used the same technique to measure hairs that he did in the 1990s for Propecia. So we got updated in the next study, but this is sort of an old-fashioned way how we counted hairs, and through that exact circle, each circle was the exact number of centimeters, and we would count at the worst area of baldness with a proscope. So of 35 subjects over 6 months, then everybody had an increase from 14% to 357%, with an average of 94%. So about twice as many hairs were in that centimeter that there were before. And certain areas did better. The top of the scalp did better than the side, and men did better than women. All of them had nice cosmetic effects, like they like the results, which is very important. This is a self-esteem condition. This isn't really not going to kill you that I know of. But self-esteem is a huge part of our day-to-day social interactions. All of these were statistically significant. The only adverse effect was we saw some hair shedding during the first month of the trial, but again, by the 6-month mark, we had all these nice results. I just have a couple examples here. So this is about twice as many hairs, but look at the cosmetic effect of twice as many hairs. And that patient was 65 years old, but we have some in their 70s. And when we talk about the next study, we called them chia pets. It's crazy, crazy stuff. But this is just the CBD study. So here, about 3 times as many hairs. She colored her hair, but she was really, really happy that bald area, even though it's not really that big, to a woman is huge. So here we are with another woman with that one, quarter-size area just bothered her immensely at 72 years of age, and just totally happy with the outcome. So there's the summary. Men saw better results than women, the vertex better than the temporal areas, essentially no side effects, and we used a very low dose. This was just 0.2% CBD in lanolin and emu oil. Okay, so then we bring it up to 2021. And so I'm going to talk about the variants, since I do have a few minutes. I'm going to talk about the variants for a second. Who has heard of the variants, THCV and CBDV? Show of hands. Okay. That's better than the last time I gave this lecture, 2 years ago, when we just were talking about doing the study. So they were not available because THCV occurs in the tiny, tiny amounts in every strain of hemp. It can occur in 3, 6, 7% in marijuana, but obviously once we start using anything that's from marijuana, it just the feds are all over us trying to do research. So we have to use THCV from hemp. And there is one strain of hemp, what's called a landrace strain, which means it's an original strain. And it occurs in the alluvial fields at the base of the Hindu Kush Mountains. And so this strain does not look like anything you've ever called hemp. It looks like a tree. It's got a base about this round. It's 22 feet tall on average, and it's 1% oil. 1%. Most of the hemp marijuana you've ever seen is 50 to 60% oil by weight. So this is crazy stuff, but it has very high amounts of THCV and CBDV, I think about 18% total. So we were able to use that, import that in 55-gallon drums, and use that for the first time when we did this study. So here we are. Now, in 2022, they're taking CBD and they're synthesizing THCV and CBDV from the CBD. So again, it's cheaper and more readily available here in the US, and it's from hemp, so we can send it anywhere in the country. So we're going to be seeing lots and lots of Varin research. Again, I talked about metabolic syndrome, which would be for weight loss, diabetes control, blood lipid control, and fatty liver disease. So lots of research coming out. But I focused in this particular study on hair regrowth. And so this is a full CB1 antagonist, a neutral antagonist. So it goes to the receptor and it just sits there and blocks it. It's just no fun. It just sits there. And it sits there for about 30 hours. So it's a really nice long-term effect. So because it's doing that, then the hair shaft starts growing, the matrix cells start making matrix, and then the telogen hair follicles turn into anagen, into active hair follicles. So it's doing 3 different things. So the other thing I added was menthol. Menthol stimulates the transition of hair follicles from telogen to anagen as well. So we really want cells that are sleeping to wake up and start growing. So we added menthol, which gives it a nice little tingle to the scalp. This oil we used was 60% CBD, 18% Varins and 60% CBD. So we had a bunch of CBD in this research
trial as well. Okay, so it was a phase 2A trial, randomized. This was a case study. It was not a placebo-controlled. There's no money for this. There's no research money. This is me and my partners doing this and seeing what happens. The results are, it was a 3% menthol. But this time we really updated the technique, and we used a micro tattoo instead of that scalp device you saw last time. So we knew exactly we were measuring the hair each time because there's a tiny tattoo there. We also looked at their happiness quotient. Like, okay, don't just tell me you're happy with the results, but give me a number from very unhappy to very happy with the results. So we measured that. We had independent physicians describe the improvements in scalp coverage. So it wasn't just the number of hairs, which is super objective, but then we had physicians give their subjective but professional subjective opinion about the improvement in hair coverage. Here is the actual plant extract from that unusual hemp strain, and then we had some vehicles in there, and then the peppermint oil. Peppermint is 40% menthol, so we wanted to use a natural organic for the menthol. Okay, so the results. We had a 246% increase in males. Look at that p-value. Then in females, 127% on average. Everyone had some increase. It was 31% was the lowest increase to 2,000%. What does that mean? That means the guy literally had one hair in the middle. It's a very bald scalp. But he now had 21, which is really cosmetically fairly attractive. It did pretty filled in, 21 hairs. We have about 10,000 hairs on our head, if that gives you some idea. Look at their happiness quotient. 55% were happy, 45% were very happy. So with minimal side effects and very safe. Here's a couple photos. Again, this was he like a bald head there in the middle, a nice big monk head, and he had enough there that he was happy. A woman here, she had enough that she was happy, and we certainly can see a cosmetic benefit. This guy, bought a sports car afterwards and started driving around. Again, this woman, that one line down her head just drove her crazy. And when she came in the clinic, it was, she was just so pleased. Okay, so quick discussion then. Again, men did better than women, and that has to do with the underlying cause, and I won't go into that kind of detail, what has to do with hormones. But we had an average with both sexes of 164%. So this is much better than either Propecia and Rogaine, either individually or together. So this is probably twice of what we would expect with the currently available therapies. And then they all had some cosmetic benefits and regrowth. We think this is like most drugs that are out there today, probably 90%. We think it's working this way. We really don't know. But and we think the menthol is doing what I said, but we don't know. And so again, these are superior to minoxidil and Propecia, but both those currently available therapies work through entirely different mechanisms. And so Dr. Cetino and I believe that there would be synergistic effects if you used minoxidil and this topical application. It might even be in a combined spray, and that might be the next step in research. And then here I just want to briefly, the point where you read about all these conflicts of interest, briefly mention then where we're going with the minor cannabinoids. So there's 178 cannabinoids, and there's two majors, we know, CBD and THC. Then there's this 170 others. In my opinion, and probably the opinion of several other major docs I present internationally on this topic, most of those are kind of like CBD. So 100 plus are just, you might as well be CBD, but are not even as good. So there's a few others, though, that are very novel. And so we're going to be seeing coming down the road, and for that group of doctors and providers and that want to help people in more the cutting edge, you should really be looking at the minor cannabinoids. Just like this group was looking at the terpenes, which I was very impressed by that research, and I'm going to spend details finding out some more information to help some people in other states. But there's terpenes. We need to be looking at the minor cannabinoids that they are coming from hemp. We can use them easily, safely, and inexpensively. So we're going to be seeing cannabichromene used for osteoporosis, for fracture healing. I've got my next research is for growing eyelashes, thicker, longer eyelashes. I think I should be in cosmetic industry.
Seriously.
We're doing use with eyebrows and eyelashes, and we're using it for treating tinnitus. That's it, I guess, short and sweet, so I can take some questions. In the back there. The hair product is commercially available. This research came out about 10 months ago, and so there's probably 4 different formulators out there, selling it.
References?
The only one I can remember offhand is alpha varin, and that might be just what they call the ingredient. So look for alpha varin. And Mios, M-I-O-S. But you'll be seeing these products out there.
Thank you.
Question? Indeed, that is true. So anything that's out there, if you stop using it, then the underlying factors that were already coming into play come back into play. And so over about 3 to 6 months, you'll be back to where you were-ish. You have a question?
Is there any reason you couldn't just go to the dispensary and use a CBD, THC free method to see results?
You could remember the THC. I didn't tell you that, but the way I thought of doing this whole study was we found that THC stops the hair shaft from elongating and tells the matrix cells to quiet down. So you could do that, but you'd be wasting your money because you get balder.
And your product.
Question? Oh, no, good question. Yeah, so I didn't go through the methodology, but
That's okay.
pretty good methodology. This was published in a peer-reviewed journal about 2 years ago, and so yeah, we had to follow all the Helsinki standards and IRB permission. But both studies were through an institutional review board and all that kind of methodology. I will mention THCV and CBD oral products. We've done 3 studies that were NIH supported, not quite funded, and our 4th study is just finishing. We get 3.1 pounds of weight loss per month, each month for 6 months, and 30% reduction in A1C, which is comparable to prescription medications, 30% improvement in HDL to LDL cholesterol ratio. I'm trying to think what else we got out of that. Those are the big numbers I remember from the THCV trials.
You guys try other?
No, but I have been asked to do a beard product, and we are going to do a beard product, and we're going to add a new neurotransmitter, naturally occurring neurotransmitter. I'm going to add to that for the beard, and we'll be seeing some results for that, because we sort of had to stimulate some follicles that never really got active. So we had to kick them into gear, and then we can stimulate them. So, good question. Yes?
The length of time the person had been bald, like if it was just a short period of time, or if they'd been bald for many years and then decided to come to try this?
Good question, and yes, there's a couple 70-year-olds. So between the 2 studies, we're about 70, 80 patients at a clinic in Clearwater. One person had been bald, had a bald, area of scalp for 40 years, since his late 30s. He was now in his late 70s and had a new girlfriend in her 60s, so he wanted. And so I didn't tell you, but some of these patients, the hair that grows when we did the second study, which I think was much more a robust combination, we called them chia pets. Dr. Satino and I called them chia pets because the hair was growing where it wasn't, hadn't grown in years. But the hair looks healthy, and it's really healthy looking hair. So when they're only putting it in the scalp and they're not putting it anywhere else, they now have this really healthy, sort of youthful 30-year-old looking hair, and then a bunch of 60-year-old hair around it. It was interesting, to say the least.
Right.
Definitely some anti-aging stuff going on there.
Biopsies to see any change in the hair follicle before and after.
No. What I hope to do, again, this is all done. We do this ourselves. We enjoy what we do, but there's no funding here. So what I'm hoping to do and getting these published in good journals is get people with money in pharmaceutical industries and other people to come out and do those kind of studies that cost a lot of money. Or nutraceutical industry, hopefully not the pharmaceutical industry. Okay, I guess that was it.
All right, so this concludes the early afternoon session. We're next door for a refreshment break until 3:30. Then we will come back in here for the 3:30 to 5:30 session, and then from 5:30 to 7, meet us back next door for a reception. Thank you for being here. Could this be them?
Our claims are or whatever, so Dr.
Yeah, I didn't see any.
Get that always an arm's length from the actual.
Sign at the end of the study, just buy the product.
Yeah. Well, Alpha Verin, A-L-P-H-A, Verin, V-A-R-I-N.
Yeah.
Uh-oh, maybe somebody
And
picked
then
them
our
up.
new, you'll be seeing a bunch of.
All right, good.
products Yeah, Skinny Strip is our big one.
Skinny strip.
Skinny Strip, yeah. We used some military.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for being a great host.
Yeah, California. Yeah, Harborside.
And recreational. I'm interested in helping you with it.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, Harborside was the first dispensary I ever went to. I was in medical school. My buddy was a licensed. Harborside, yeah.
He's got weight loss next week.
Yeah, no, it was big time. Yeah, there's.
Next week, capsule. He's micellizing it.
Yeah, him and his brother, right? Or him and his brother?
It wasn't his brother, it was
Sounds like
another guy.
what you're
Actually, it
doing
was with Steve last
and what
month.
I'm doing, there's some parallels. I mean, really like.
He's got the braids, right?
Yeah, and he always
Braids,
wears
the top hat.
And he loves taking pictures.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah,
That's always a cool sign.
he's been at it for a while. Yeah.
Educating me
yeah.
about what to roll off and then we say, okay, go to William Hearst,
Yeah.
Rockefeller, the Vanderbilts, the J.P. Morgan,
Yeah.
and the economy who said you need to stand out any competition because we used to cannabis grows like a weed.
Yeah.
So if you have a farmer or a rancher backyard, you can people can do this.
Yeah.
And maybe the reason.
Yeah, man.
That's what people Andrew talking in his book.
Yeah.
But in order to eliminate competition from the big, the little man, like us.
Yeah.
Make it illegal.
Hemp is illegal. Well, wait, marijuana is illegal because hemp is so valuable. That's the weird thing. It's like, oh, you think hemp should be used, but marijuana's but no, marijuana's illegal because of the value of hemp.
And I didn't know this until about a year
Yeah.
ago. You can use hemp to make cinder blocks.
Yeah, hempcrete. Yeah.
You can make homes, you can make fuel, fireproof.
Yeah,
You can
animal
make
bedding.
fireproof homes.
Hempcrete. I know, man. Yeah. Yeah. The infrastructure's coming. There's more people, decorticators. I got friends that farm, and they're like, I need $2 million for a decorticator.
4 years of patience.
Decorticator? Yeah, it's basically takes the hemp fibers and chops them up so you can make stuff out of them.
Yes, we are.
Instead of like wet redding.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, fuel you can burn, yeah, for lamps and stuff.
Yeah, is that the new one?
Yeah, man, I mean, just start planting it, start growing the seeds. Yeah, it's not.
That's the one.
Yeah, the diesel engine.
I got 2 or 3 studies going on.
And I realized they didn't want to talk to me. And I finally
Oh, the product Alpha Variant is available.
Yeah, man.
They said,
Yeah. Let me get up and talk to you over here. I'm sorry.
It's just like
and they came out with the results of this really.
maybe like $30-40 a month.
And I've learned subsequently that most of
I don't deal with that stuff.
the University of Florida is very anti-marijuana. You know, whether they know it or not.
That's Terrell Newton. But we can
And I
take it and
wonder
give it to
where you
him.
get that sense from.
I don't know if that's his
Florida.
program.
Just search my name.
I don't, but I think, a lot of this can be political
First
in
study that
nature.
came out in humans.
It is. And
I'll leave it that. I'll leave it at that.
my heart sunk when you were talking about this, that you have to teach the dangers of marijuana, and all the dangers you talked about were what we do to each other.
Yes.
And it makes my blood boil when I hear that. But I would just, I would hope that if you
Yeah, I just did the studies with several people, men, 7 next doors selling
people that might be willing to come to accomplish like this,
the last study I
I would jump on top of them and tell them how here's my results.
It's called Skinny Strip. It's a little breath strip.
If you have a card, I'd be more than willing to take it back.
I'm a real advocate. It's my retirement.
They have right now. They have.
I see. But I am trying to get them a little bit more involved with what we're doing in terms of, at least show up at some of the community forums.
It is
And, oh, nice.
Anyone who wanted to see what I do, they'd have to drive a long ways, but that's what I want to do. There needs to be some communication with them.
So maybe you'll put your favorite person in front of you. You'll do 1 or 2 bites, and you're just not interested.
I don't know why I have pharmacists who are willing to come on my panels and communities, so
And that's the food seeking behaviors.
they're there, but what about FAMU and, we have a pharmacy department.
You don't have like I'm half hungry, I'm half full. So it makes the switch tell me I'm full. And I don't have my seeking behavior. It's secondary.
Well, thank you.
Behavior to go
Appreciate
get on the
that.
sofa and go grab a piece of pizza.
It's time for some
Have to
snacks.
drive to go. Oh, yeah. I metformin. You look at all the physiology. Same thing, but that's a prescription diabetic drug. In Europe, that's a weight loss drug. We're trying to make it metformin. Yeah. It's a weight loss drug, not in this country because it's generic. Yeah, you want. There is a duration with these teas. It's just till you get rid of the weight you put on, the metabolic weight, which is all around your abdominal organs. So once you lose that, you don't have to stay on it. So let's go to Med 7, or you should go to Med 7, talk to Max. Get some samples. I think they're working through the same mechanism. But I don't like getting involved with the treatment of anybody.
So what brought me up here was one, I gotta tell you, I wanted to do your whole presentation, but I had a meeting, then I had to step out for it, so I missed pretty much all of it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But my partner was here and was things that filled me in a little bit. 2 questions. You're doing med stuff, soul spectrum, CBD product, and you use the topical, but it also has, is there a conflict?
No, so because it's topical, it's just absorbing right into the follicle. There's very little systemic absorption. So it's literally just going down the hole into the base of the follicle. So that's how the studies have shown it's being absorbed.
And where would I get that? There was a couple products you mentioned, but there was one that's generally standing here a moment ago.
Alpha Variant is the one I know you can go and buy right now. I don't know how you find it. Yeah, you just got to search the name. Yeah, I'm absolutely terrible at the business side of it. But Alpha Variant, that product is spray, very similar looking to kind of a Rogaine, $30 to $40 a month, and it's out there. It's been out there for a couple months. And where are you looking? Oh yeah. No, I would not look like a whole lot different than you. Yeah, I'm about a year and a bit. But you know what's even cool? Greg, by the way, what's your first name? George. I've been helping sending it to my friends for a year and a half, and so I've got all these photos because they're so happy. It's, it works. Even if you have 30% more hair when you're bald, it just gives you some. I understand. So you have the hair my dad had, and I had that in my late 40s, and I had the hair implants, but they were terrible, and it just looked like a doll hair. And then this came in and filled in all around it. So cosmetically, I'm happy with it. It might be thin hair, but I think I'm happy with it. This one guy was the poorest outcome objectively of the second study, right? Probably a 60-year-old guy, poorest outcome. He had this much bald in the back of his head, and now he had about this much, maybe like a 30% rim. So he was so happy with his results. He said his wife started getting risky. It's human behavior. So he was no longer had this big. He just said this, but that was enough. So it's different than treating patients in the ER. I came from with Army Doc and then mostly urgent care, work comp, did a bunch of clinical work, emergency room. Did that for 30 years. So this is a whole new wheel for me for the last 8 years. I'm full time doing this. I'm on a bunch of boards. I advise pharmaceuticals and grow ops all over the world. Speaking in Ireland next week at the PhD convention. So I'm mostly an educator. So I have books. I have really erudite books for PhDs and pharmacologists, and then I have like provider books, and then I have patient books. I educate all three levels, translate. Don't make any money doing it, but I have a lot of fun. Welcome to the cannabis world. Yeah, you're welcome. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Recording stopped.